wants to create photos that stand apart from the other photographers out there, or at least you should want to create photos that stand apart from the others and differentiate yourself while also retaining who you are as your own artist. Now, the most important thing is certainly composition, getting the settings right in camera. The next most important thing is editing and creating your own unique style that stands out. There's a lot of photography out there, and so you want to be able to create a unique style that fits who you are as an artist. And in order to create your own unique style, you need to actually be able to understand the tools at your disposal. Whether you use Lightroom, Photoshop, another program, you just want to be able to actually know how to control the image, how to control light, mood, etc., to create images that you're proud of. Now, a lot of people use Lightroom. A lot of people just use basic adjustments, shadows, highlights, exposure, temperature and color, saturation, all that good stuff. Now, I want to show you how to take that editing in Lightroom to the next level. And this isn't a new update by any means. It's probably coming up on about a year old. So many of you have probably already played around with these tools, but maybe you haven't seen some of these aspects within the tools. And what I'm talking about is masking within Lightroom. This allows you to create that drama, shape the light within your image so that it takes it to the next level. So let's take a look at this photo I took at Trillium Lake in Oregon, and I'll show you the differences and how powerful masking can be. So here's the photo I took. I've done some basic adjustments. You can see the highlights, shadows. I've played with the temperature and tint a little bit, as well as some color grading, calibration, other aspects within this. But we're not going to go into that today. What I want to show you is that. So just using the masking tools within Lightroom that I talked about, and you can see the difference. I'm shaping the light a little bit more. I haven't touched this in Photoshop yet. So let me actually show you how I achieve this. Now, the first thing, let's just talk about this image. So what I want to do is, this was a sunset. You know, there's some nice color in the clouds, but it wasn't some incredible burner. But I do want to enhance that. I want to enhance the mood and the light coming through as if it's coming through the trees. And so the first thing that I'm going to do, and this is the tool panel that I'm talking about, the masking within Lightroom. So let's get oriented a little bit. So we have all of these different options. Select subject. If you have a person and you want to brighten them without brightening their background, that's how you achieve that. Selecting the sky, again, pretty self-explanatory, but it does a pretty good job at selecting just the sky. We have our general brush tool, a linear gradient, a radial gradient. I use those a ton. Color range and luminance range, I don't use all that much, but they are really powerful if you want to change just a specific color within your image or just a specific luminance, whether it's the highlights in the sky, the shadows, etc. So the first thing in this image that I'm going to do is select the sky. You can see it did a pretty good job. There is some bleeding over into the mountain, but that's totally fine. Now we could start making adjustments here, but I want to go one step further. If you go over here and click these three dots, you can go down to Intersect, Mask With, and a Radial Gradient. I'm just going to drag this where the sun where the sun is setting. And you can see how it's red. I can move this around, and wherever it's red, it's going to be affecting the image. Now, if I bring it down here, nothing happens because we're intersecting it with that sky mask. So I'm happy with, I wanted to bring my feather all the way to 100, it's already there. And so now we can just start playing around with this. I'm going to drop the dehaze a little bit, bring up the temperature, bring up the tint a little bit. Might expand this and rotate it a little bit. Maybe bring up the whites a bit and drop the highlights just a tiny bit. I don't want to blow anything out. So as a first adjustment, I think that looks pretty good. It's highlighting the light over where it's setting, where the sun is setting. Next thing, I'm going to do another same exact thing. Again, with all of my editing, I try to make smaller changes as they go. Just allows for more control over your editing in the overall image. So I'm going to do this again, intersect with, radial gradient. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. Again, I'm going to bring up the whites a touch, maybe dehaze, bring down the highlights. So if we see the overall adjustments that we've done with the mask, I think that's looking pretty good. Now I want to create a light bleed. So the light spilling over the trees and the hill into the frame. So if we create a mask, select sky, but instead of doing the intersect with the radial gradient, now I'm going to click invert. So now it's selecting the opposite. So the foreground, now I do intersect with radial gradient, and you can see it's not affecting the sky. So I can actually paint in or add some light bleed to this without changing the highlights or anything in the sky. So if we bring down the dehaze, bring up the temperature, maybe the whites a little bit, saturation, as if that light is really coming through, and it's that golden hour light that we love. So I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to start shaping the light throughout the image. One thing that I'm noticing is I don't particularly love my foreground, but you can see down here some of the rocks that are showing underwater. So I want to bring those out a little bit. I'm going to use my brush here. I'm going to bring up the dehaze a little bit, the contrast, and we can adjust this, but I just want to see what's going on here. So I think it made it too dark. I'm going to bring up the whites just a bit. So you can see it created a little bit more mood. You can kind of see these rocks a little bit more. I might bring this in after I do all my Lightroom adjustments into Photoshop and actually dodge and burn those. All right, so after that adjustment, I'm going to do a little bit of in Lightroom dodging and burning here, create yet another mask, go with the brush. I'm going to decrease the size a little bit, increase the temperature and the whites. And so if this light was naturally coming into frame, how would it illuminate this scene? Well, it would probably hit some of this part on these rocks, maybe over here, a little bit over here. And I want to be fairly subtle here. These aren't the most interesting rocks in the world, so I don't want your eye to just be stuck on them as you're being drawn through the scene. But I do want to create some more realistic lighting and some more drama to it. So we're just going to paint in. The great thing about these masks is once you actually paint it in, you can always adjust it. And I think this is way too yellow. So I'm going to increase the tint a little bit, but drop this back down. So you can see we added a little bit of subtle light into these rocks. Again, it's not too much, but just creates a little bit more mood to the image. So now that we've done this, I'm going to create another mask. Now we're going to go into the vignetting and actually drawing the eye through the image. Some of these the top right, bottom left, not particularly interesting. So I'm going to darken a lot of this image and try to draw the eye into the center where the mountain is and where the sunset is. So I go to linear gradient. I'm going to drag up here. And instead of intersecting with this mask, we're just going to add linear gradient. I'm going to do that once again. So now all of these gradients are going to have, all of these masks are going to have the exact same settings. And one last one. Actually, I lied. One more. All right, so now that everything is masked, we can drop our exposure a little bit. And look at that. So much more mood to this image. You can see the before and after of that. A lot of the dead space here is, you're not really looking, your eyes are drawn more into the frame. We're gonna do one more, I think, maybe more than one more, but we'll see. Another radial gradient. I wanna do a bigger kind of light bleed here and make this subtle. So we're gonna bring up the whites a little bit, the dehaze just a tiny bit, or down, I guess a tiny bit, and then the temperature up, tint up. So if we look at that, just adding some more light to the scene, I think that looks really good. So if we look at the before and after of just the masks, you can see how much more mood there is to this image. And Lightroom has done a great job at incorporating these masks and making them really powerful. So in some images, you don't even need to pop over to Photoshop. Now that's, again, where I still feel most comfortable. I spend the most time in Photoshop, but Lightroom is such a powerful tool. And these masking tools are really a game changer to your images, creating and shaping light. And I highly recommend playing around with this, figuring out the best style for you, really learning and mastering these tools, because that's how it's going to set you apart from the rest of the millions of photographers out there and allow you to create your own unique style that you're at the end of the day proud of. Hopefully you learn something within Lightroom that you didn't already know, or it'll just enhance your workflow in the future. If you did like this video, please do drop a like. If you have any questions, drop them below in the comments. And of course, please do subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We'll see you in the next one.